Well, hi there. Thank you for joining me for the latest edition of Telile 24/7. I'm your host, Adam Cook. On this week's show, Strait Area Transit is back on the roads after a 5-month break due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We'll speak to the chair of the board for the Transit Cooperative about what customers can expect now that its vehicles are back on the highways. And we're also going to continue our series on municipal election preparedness in these pandemic times as we speak to the returning officer for Inverness County, Dernie Gillis. And we begin this week with our continued focus on what will happen when schools reopen in our area next month. Telile 24 viewers might remember that last week I spoke to the principal at École Beauport, Jacinta Sampson-Sullivan. And this week it's time for the Strait Regional Centre for Education perspective. So we're speaking with the executive director of the SRCE, Paul Landry, about what happens when English language schools open up in Richmond County, Port Hawkesbury, and beyond. Here's that interview with Mr. Landry right now. The last time we spoke to you in June, things were not quite settled down in terms of what would happen with this coming academic year. And you got the directive from Education Minister Zach Churchill in mid-July. Can you give me a little bit of a sense of what that process was like leading up to that announcement, and whether you feel the Strait Regional Centre for Education and its schools were adequately heard in those conversations? What was all that like?
Well, the plan that was launched by Minister Churchill in July really was a result of a number of meetings and consultations that led up to that point. So the back to school plan was developed with input from the regional centers for education, from public health, from advice from experts at the IWK Health Center, from feedback from our union partners, from teachers, principals, families, and students. And back in June, Nova Scotia parents and students were asked to complete an online survey to share their experience with regards to at-home learning during the pandemic. And participation in that survey, there was about 28,000 surveys that were received from parents and guardians and students regarding their at-home learning experience, and really their needs and suggestions for improvement, as a result of what we went through back in the spring. So the survey asked, a number of questions, and respondents were given the opportunity to provide answers to that. And we certainly really appreciated families taking the time to provide their input so improvements and adjustments could be made. All of this feedback really helped to inform the back to school plan, and as well, many of our SRCE staff were directly part of the planning team for the plan, so I believe we had lots of really positive and good input into the development of the plan.
All right. Well, with all that in mind, then, can you give me a bit of a snapshot on how things are going overall as you and your school principals and staff and all the schools in the Strait region are preparing for the reopening? What can you tell me about how that process is going at this particular point in August?
Well, I believe that our preparations are going well. We're really guided by the principles of the plan, which is safety of the students and staff, first and foremost, the equity for all of our learners, so trying to be responsive to all of our student needs. And really the plan offers flexibility for us to adapt to changing circumstances that may arise if necessary. So our priority, as we know, is to ensure the safe return of students and staff into in-class learning in September. Full return, and we are working with the province to ensure that we have what we need to implement the plan and make sure that we have required face masks, additional sanitizer, and personal protective equipment in our schools. And we're very thankful to the province. They've provided the personal protective equipment for our regional center, so that's been a very positive partnership for us. And we are in close contact with public health officials through the Department of Education and Early Childhood Development. And we're following their guidance and advice to implement the public health measures to prepare for school opening in September.
We know some of the directives that have come down from both the Department of Education and from Public Health, but can you help put it in plain English and help paint a picture for those who are wondering how is this going to work in terms of social distancing in the classroom, in terms of being able to carry out curriculum, even in terms of enforcing the wearing of masks by children from ages grade primary to grade 12? What can you tell us about essentially what a school in the Strait Regional Centre for Education system or any across the province is going to look like in the fall?
Well, there are going to be certainly changes when students and staff return to school in the fall. It's not going to look the same. There are going to be some changes. They'll notice when they come back. Obviously, when they get on the bus in the morning, they'll be required to wear masks, and their drivers will be required to wear masks, and they'll sit as a family unit together on the bus as best as possible. And when they arrive at school, there certainly will be some changes. There'll be staggered recesses and lunch times, and slight changes to other schedules to reduce really the number of students in the hallways at any given time. So there'll also be cohorting and grouping in elementary schools. So basically, it'll be teachers to students and not students to teachers. So a lot less travel within the hallways and so on. We're doing our best right now to try to create more space with students within their own classrooms. So reducing any excess furniture or furniture that we can remove in there, so we do gain some more room in there. We'll consider using separate exits and entrances within buildings so that students aren't all funneling out through one entrance or exit. And they'll also see certainly lots of increased signage for reminders, decals on floors for reminders about physical distancing and good health practices, and frequent hand washing, cough and sneeze etiquette. Very similar to what we see out in the public, but probably a little bit more. Also, they'll be noticing, we'll be doing frequent and enhanced cleaning of high-touch surfaces in common areas, requiring masks in common areas for high school students and staff on buses, as we mentioned earlier, for staff as well, and for high school students when they're changing classes. And also, we'll have personal protective equipment where needed, and lots of, or I shouldn't say lots, but many hand sanitizing stations located throughout the school, so students can have that. Really, our focus is going to be clean in and clean out. So, as you enter the building, you clean, or as you change classrooms, those types of things. Basically, cleaning in and cleaning out. So when you're leaving your space, you wash your hands, or you're prepared to, and when you're coming in, clean your hands as well. So lots of changes with that. Lots more attention, Adam, really on those basic things that we're all sort of doing, both at home and when we're doing our business out in public. Similar things to that, but really trying to control movement a little bit better within our school buildings.
Paul, just picking up on that, there have been suggestions both from the provincial government and from the Department of Education, but also just in general around the community, to say to parents, if your children aren't used to wearing masks now, they're never going to get used to wearing masks on the first day of school in September. You can't just rush and get a mask or get a roll of paper towel as you're getting ready to get on the bus. So is that something that the Centre for Education is saying as well to the parents, to say, get your children ready, this is going to be a back to school time unlike any other back to school time in the past?
Yeah, I think so. There, Adam, going back to school, we want it to be a really positive experience for our students and our staff and our parents. and our community as well. You know, it's a positive thing. We've been out of school for a long time, and we want it to be a really positive and exciting thing for our students to experience. So you know, we've added masks to our school supply list. We've added you know, water bottles because you know, we're going to be asking students to use their water bottles at refill stations. So all kinds of little things like that. And I think as a society right now, we're all getting used to wearing masks. I think it was great timing for Dr. Strang to ask us to begin to start doing that, you know, well ahead of school starting. So, you know, within our communities, we're all getting used to putting on our masks to go into public places. And you know, I think really when you look at our own communities, there's been tremendous compliance, really, with people, you know, respecting that request from public health and from the province. So, you know, generally, I think it's going to be positive. It's going to look a little differently, but I'm sure that our students and staff and parents are going to be really excited for the start of the school year.
All right. Just a quick question on busing, Paul. You'd mentioned a couple of moments ago that students are expected to wear their masks on the buses and to be able to space themselves out as best they can. What are the conversations like with the bus drivers and with their union? And I understand that these could be sensitive talks as a result of it being talks between the Centre for Education and the union. Do you get the sense that there could be any rerouting involved in terms of any of the students or the schools, or do you expect to be able to make the status quo in that regard?
I believe at this point, Adam, you know, the plan is that we will go with status quo, that busing will be available to all of our students, children from primary to pre-primary to grade 12, as we've provided in the past. And you know, because physical distancing was not always possible as per the public health order, students whose parents want them to ride the bus will be required to wear non-medical masks, as will drivers. But you know, we believe that you know, obviously in September sometimes we have to make routing changes just due to, that's just a normal transition that we do from year to year, and sometimes in the first couple of weeks in September we have to make you know, little changes to bus routing and that sort of thing. But as at this point we haven't planned any routing changes due to COVID protocols or anything like that.
How much of this plan, Paul, is based on the concept of a best case scenario? And we know that Nova Scotia and the Atlantic provinces in general have done well in containing COVID-19 over the past couple of months, but we also know that there are repeated predictions of a second wave or of smaller outbursts. What happens in the event of a second wave or a small outburst of COVID-19 anywhere in Nova Scotia, but especially in the Strait region?
So the back to school plan has response plans in place should any of the COVID-19 activity change, and any decision to change the approach to school will follow public health guidelines. So we will take our lead from Dr. Strang and the team at Nova Scotia Public Health as how to respond.
Last question to you, Paul, and this is about the idea that you've now presided, as have your principals and teachers and staff, over the complete shutdown of a school system, but also now you're getting ready for the complete reopening of a school system. Is there anything that you feel you've learned from the shutdown that you feel you can carry forward positively into the reopening, or do these compare at all?
Well, you know, it's certainly uncharted territory for all of us. You know, we were certainly in one place in the spring, and that was we were all sort of working from home or sort of a hybrid of both, or you know, some of us were back at work. But it's really you know, a fluid situation that we're working through. You know, it was great that we got to summer and we got to be able to, get out and move around a lot more. I think that's been great for everyone really in our communities. And we will closely continue to adjust our routines in light of the ongoing pandemic. We'll continue to work closely together to implement the plan and the ongoing public health measures to prevent the spread of COVID-19 and help each other stay as healthy and safe as possible. Really, we're all in this together. We want to continue to support, and be there for one another. Our staff, students, families, and school communities certainly supported us and adapted to our changing circumstances in the spring, and we know that will continue throughout school startup and throughout the fall. And when we meet our students and we're going to meet them where they're at in their learning and support them in their transition to a new grade level. But really, there's lots of work to be done between now and then, because we're making adjustments and changes to our routines. But I know that I guess I feel really positive that we are able to that we'll be able to do that in the fall.
Well, just as we know that this is going to be a back-to-school period in September, unlike any other, we also know that the run-up to that has a lot of moving parts in August. So we greatly appreciate you taking some time for us today, Paul. Thanks so much for joining us on Telile 24/7.
Thank you, Adam. Take care.
All right, you too. Paul Landry is the Executive Director for the Strait Regional Centre for Education. We have been speaking to him at his office in Port Hawkesbury via Zoom. Stay tuned for more Telile 24/7 in just a moment. In mid-March, with COVID-19 sweeping through Atlantic Canada and social distancing protocols coming into effect here in Nova Scotia, Strait Area Transit took its vehicles off the road in Richmond, Inverness and Victoria counties and the town of Port Hawkesbury. However, that break ended on August the 4th when the Transit Cooperative returned its vehicles to the highways, albeit in limited service. To get a sense on what exactly is available to transit customers and how the Transit Cooperative is going to survive through 2020, I spoke to the chair of the board for Strait Area Transit. He is a municipal councillor from Inverness. His name is John Dowling. Here's that interview right now. And joining us today on the phone is the chair of the Board of Directors for Strait Area Transit. He is also the municipal councillor for Inverness County's District 6. We're pleased to welcome John Dowling to Telile 24/7. John, thank you for joining me this morning.
Oh, thanks for having me this morning, Adam. I appreciate it greatly. Thank you.
No trouble at all. So obviously we have you here because of your role with Strait Area Transit, and because this week is a big week for the Transit Cooperative. You have been able to get vehicles back out on the road for the first time since mid-March, when the pandemic really swept through and Nova Scotia's state of emergency kicked in. Can you give me a sense of what services are available through Strait Area Transit right now, and just basically how many vehicles and drivers do you have out there? What does Strait Area Transit look like these days?
We're coming into this kind of slowly at first. We've had some changes over the summer, and so what we started out as, because of just kind of feeling our way through with COVID and so on, we started out initially just as doing medical runs and smaller family charters. So if you have for a wedding or something like that, we're just going to kind of feel things out for the first couple of weeks to see how it works. And it's, there's still a lot of anxiety out there about getting into public transit. If you're getting into one person in the vehicle or two or three and so on. So we're just easing our way in at this point, just over the next couple of weeks, and we'll see how things are going to run once we get into September, once the schools reopen.
So just for clarification, I just want to make sure, so the fixed routes that Strait Area Transit has had in Inverness and Victoria counties, and the dial-a-ride service that you folks have had for quite a while in Inverness, Victoria, Port Hawkesbury and Richmond, those are on hold for the time being, or are they there in a small version?
No, they're on hold right now. Like I say, we're basically just fixing more or less on the dial-a-ride, just to basically get those important appointments and so on. And it's the same as before. We'll go to if you got a hospital appointment or a medical appointment anywhere in the area, or Halifax, Sydney for that time gets through, then we'll get back and we'll be able to open back up into the fixed routes that we've always had in the past.
So how many drivers and actual vehicles would you say are on the road right now, or at the very least are ready to go should there be any kind of calls coming in of this nature?
Right now, that was part of our plan over the last few months. In the last month, we did bring in, we met with our drivers, we met with any staff we had, basically getting the buses ready. So we probably have anywhere from 9 to 10 drivers that are ready to roll if need be. Our buses, we've been working over the summer to make sure that they have been ready, because we didn't know what was going to happen. Of course, we could have opened up in July if things had been available and so on, but we didn't. And so the buses are everything we have out there is ready to roll. So we have there's about 8 buses there that right now that we have available, and also Strait Area Transit also looks after Victoria County Transit. So those 2 buses that we have in Victoria are also they're back into their fleet, and they're ready to roll as well.
What are the protocols for Strait Area Transit in terms of wearing masks in the vehicles, both for drivers and for the clients that would be coming on? What are you folks asking of them?
Basically, the masks are mandatory. That's coming right from the Department of Health, from Dr. Strang. So drivers, if they're in the vehicle, regardless if they have passengers or not, are required to wear a mask. Passengers, of course, when they get on as well, and the buses, of course, we've changed everything so that, of course, the buses, besides their daily cleanings that they would have had regardless of COVID, they're getting cleaned in between every passenger, so that handles are getting wiped down, seats are getting wiped down, and so that anything that was in contact, it's going to be cleaned and wiped. Hand sanitizer will be available, and everything is so. If you were to call up to make an appointment today, Adam, you're going to be screened, of course, for that when you call, just to go through the protocols. We'll let you know, of course, that you do have to have a mask. We'll ask about travel if you've been out of the province and so on. So a lot of the same protocols, almost as if you were coming into the province, and everything we can to do to keep the buses sanitized, it'll be done.
I want to ask a little bit about the business end of Strait Area Transit in this pandemic year, John, and I want to begin with a question from the personnel side of things. I know Jesse McDonald stepped down as Strait Area Transit's general manager just before the COVID-19 social distancing protocols kicked in. Have you folks been able to find a replacement for her during that time?
Yes, we have. So Jesse moved on at the end of March. So we basically the board, for the most part, in between when we were closed, we were looking after the business part of it. We were not running. We were doing the odd little run here and there. We did do a couple of food hamper runs for the municipality of Inverness County, and we did do the odd medical depending on the circumstances. So personnel-wise, the board kind of looked after that, mostly myself and Councillor Mustard during the summer. And so we did hire so we did advertise. We brought in a new manager. Her name is Amber Kerrigan. So she's been with us for about 6 weeks now. And so we kind of threw her in, and she's been reorganizing, resetting everything up, looking after the day-to-day operations and coordinating everything from drivers' meetings to all the protocols and the policies, and getting the vehicles where we're at right now for ready to roll use.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to being able to speak with her sometime down the road as well. You mentioned Councillor Jim Mustard just a moment ago, and he was the chair of the board back in the spring. I spoke to him and asked him about the difficulty in terms of being able to just basically throw the lights on and keep the service running, not just during a pandemic year, but there have been challenges that Strait Area Transit has faced in other years as well, too. How are you all doing in terms of being able to just basically get through 2020 and be able to prepare Strait Area Transit for the future?
The funding is still there from the municipalities. Richmond and Inverness, of course, is still contributing financially. We did reduce it just because of the numbers, the ridership being down, of course, while we were closed for the last couple of months. Port Hawkesbury still does an in-kind donations for office space for the garage and the business office. So, the province, through Community Cultures and Heritage, they've been great over the summer. They want the buses back on the road. They want to see people in them, and they've been great with financial assistance, of course, as they always have. And they've also come through with financial assistance for sanitizing equipment, PPE, and so on. So they've been there. So it took us a little while to get reorganized, just where the board does not, we normally don't do the day-to-day operations, of course, right? But we've come through it, and I think we're finally back up on where we should be. It's always going to be a challenge, of course, Adam, right? With our funding, of course, and we always want more, of course, but there's never enough.
It's been 12 years since Strait Area Transit kicked off, and you've been the board chair, as you mentioned, for a couple of years now, and have just recently come back on board in that regard. Can you give me a sense on what positives you take away from what's happened in the last 5 months? And some may say, well, there's not a lot of positives to be gained in a situation like this, but is there anything that you and your staff and your Strait Area Transit colleagues can look at and say, well, we learned something here and this will help us out in the future?
Oh, definitely on that end. We've I think everybody likes a good challenge, and we've grabbed it. We've shown what we can take in the midst of a pandemic, work through it, get things back up and running. I mean, initially we had, we kind of planned, late August, early September before we thought we'd initially be back up on the road first. So we've been busy over the months. We've learned that we can work with what we have. We know we can take resources from here and make them work with the little bit we have. And it's been a pretty challenging summer. But at the same time, we've been getting the feedback from the public, from the government, from the province, even from our own municipalities and our board. It's a service that we need. It was missed while we were closed, and until we get back up and running completely, we're not out of this. But again, we've learned that we can knuckle down here and get by with whatever changes have been thrown at us through the province due to the COVID.
All right, well, I'm glad you're looking at it so positively. We have covered a lot of ground in a short time, John, and I appreciate you giving me some time today. Did you want to add anything else about all of this concerning Strait Area Transit before we wrap it up?
Well, I guess just quickly, Adam, just I want to thank the public, the riders, that we've for their patience over the summer. It's been a trying experience, and we just want to let the public know that we are working on opening things up further. It'll take some time, but with everything else, as long as nothing changes with COVID-19 in the next couple of weeks, we're looking forward to getting back into full service so that we can get everybody that needs to be out there, if it's for medical trips, for shopping, or just to go visit a neighbor or relative, a couple miles down the road that they couldn't get to over the summer. We're going to be happy to assist, hopefully in the very near future, for the way we were in the past.
Well, I do hope that you'll be able to achieve these goals, and I want to thank you, John, for giving me a couple of moments here to talk about the relaunch of Strait Area Transit and what we could look at for the future. Thanks again for joining us on Telile 24/7 today.
I appreciate you allowing me to speak. Thank you very much, Adam. You take care.
Over the past few weeks, Telile 24/7 has brought you some perspectives from Richmond County and the towns of Port Hawkesbury and Mulgrave as to how voters in these areas will be able to mark their X during this fall's municipal elections with the pandemic still going on. And this time around, we're going to speak to a representative from Inverness County, which is currently mulling over whether to add e-voting to the traditional paper balloting options. From Shetticamp to Port Hastings, from West Bay Road to Margaree, everybody will be considering these options, and it will all fall in the hands of Dernie Gillis, a veteran returning officer for Inverness County. Let's hit the ground running. This is obviously not your first time being the returning officer for Inverness County, but you do have to apply for the job, and applying for the job at this point in our history is very different from applying for it in any other election. What made you want to come back and take another crack at this again, knowing that COVID-19 has changed everything in terms of social distancing and how an election's carried out. Why did you decide to go for the job again this time around?
Well, first off, it was back in the end of January, February, so we really didn't know that COVID-19 was going to have the effect that it did. I'm not going to say at this point how that would have influenced me if I had known about it. So, but once I made my commitment at that time, as far as I was concerned, there was no turning back. The second reason was I've been with them since 2008. I did 5 elections, 3 regular and 3 by-elections. So I felt I had something to offer, and whether I was the returning officer or if I could contribute and help somebody else or prepare somebody else for next year, for 4 years' time, then I was willing to hang around. So as everything unfolded, obviously it became, sort of uncomfortable, but we have a plan, and I have a roadmap to follow, and I have good support from the municipal office. So I think we'll get through it okay, but it is different.
Yours is a difficult job in any year, partly because of the huge geographical size of Inverness County. I mean, we're looking at everywhere from communities just outside Telile's general coverage area, like Port Hastings and West Bay and Marble Mountain, going all the way up, of course, to Cheticamp, to Pleasant Bay, up towards Meat Cove, and everywhere in between. So you have a difficult job at the best of times. So can you tell me what a typical summer and fall is like for you in carrying out your job as returning officer and setting up for the election, and how things are a little different this time around?
There's 3 things. I have 3 fronts that I have to deal with. One, I have the election as I know it, the election as we did it for the last 5, the paper ballots, the polls, all of that. That's still there. I started off with that, booking the halls, booking workers, all the things that I would do normally. And I'm pretty well advanced on that. I have a really good jump on that, probably more advanced than I would have been if we weren't working in a COVID-19 year. The other thing, I was a little bit leery of having a federal or a provincial election come down on us. So I was making sure that I wasn't going to get bumped out of any communities. I got their facilities, and that's why I went after them early, and they got them booked. So that if anybody wants a hall now, they pretty much got to come to me. So I have all that, and I have a lot of my good workers that have worked with me in the past are back again. The other thing I can say about that phase is that COVID-19, of course, is still an influence because many of these centers are closed. And so it took a little bit of rooting around to find out who to apply to, who to ask. And then they wanted to know our plan, how are we going to make sure that their facility is going to be secure and safe. Same thing with the workers. They want to know how are they going to be safe. And of course, ultimately, we have to make sure that the voters are safe. So that's kind of my roadmap, and I go through that step by step. And I think everybody is online. That could change in the fall. We don't know what's going to happen. But so far, I think everybody's on board with that.
All right, that's good to hear. And I want to ask you in a couple of moments about the possibility that there could be e-voting added to paper ballots. But for the time being, I wanted to center in on the idea of getting these halls together and getting your staff together. I just want to ask you quickly, in a typical year, when would you start that process? Because you mentioned that you had applied and been confirmed as a returning officer back in January. When does your work begin, and when do you start gathering staff together to make sure the election runs smoothly?
In a normal year?
Yes.
Oh, I probably wouldn't start it until after nomination day in September. That would give me a month. I'd book the halls, book the workers, but at that time I would know the situation with regards to acclamations. right now I'm booking as if I'm going to have elections in 6 districts. Back then, I would only have elections in the districts in which an election was going to occur. Maybe I'd have 4, maybe I'd have 5, but never 6. So it's a little different that way.
Yeah.
I'm preparing for the worst case scenario,
Mm.
or best case. It's always good to have an exciting election. So whatever way you want to call it, that's what I'm preparing for.
And of course, you're looking at everything from the possibility of further outbursts to a second wave to changes in social distancing regulations by the time we get to October. So obviously, you're keeping a heightened sense of awareness in terms of what happens week to week. That's definitely different from what we'd see in a non-pandemic year. Yes.
Well, and I alluded to it at the beginning there that I had 3 fronts that I was keeping an eye on, and COVID-19 is certainly one of them. And but as it evolves, the Association of Nova Scotia Municipalities, they are putting out directives. They do the correlating with Nova Scotia Department of Health, and they have a brochure out now. It's called "How You Run an Election During a Pandemic," and it's very helpful. And I think that from a due diligence point of view, if we follow that guideline, then I think we should be okay. But it's just basically all the things that we've been told to do so far. Washing your hands, social distancing, wearing a mask. All of those things will take place in our polls, in my polls, and so that part of it is going to take a little bit of extra organization. We got to get in. I booked all the halls. I booked them for 2 days, one for preparation and one for the actual election. So we will go in the day before on Friday, and we'll mark off the floor, and we'll put in the barriers and open the back doors so that people can come in. And we'll have extra workers at the door to meet them, to direct them to their poll, and to ensure social distancing and wearing a mask. At least social distancing. Masks are maybe a little bit controversial yet, but it's certainly our hope that the majority of people will wear masks, that everybody will wear masks. I was in town yesterday, and I was really, really surprised, maybe, but I felt very, very confident in our people that every store that I went into, everybody in that store was wearing a mask without exception. So I don't think that's going to be an issue for us now. It's good to see that. So that's the second front. The third front, of course, is then e-voting. I do not think that we would be entering into e-voting in Inverness County yet if it wasn't for COVID-19. But we are taking Premier McNeil's famous words now, "Stay the blazes home," and we're giving the people that option. People may not want to come out. I'm getting up there in years. I was probably my average age. I'd be the upper range of the average age of people voting, and I'd be cautious, going into a crowd. So they have to feel confident about how we run our polls. But at the same time, this option is there now for them to vote from home, and I think that's good. And it does 2 things for us. It gives us another method of having an election during a pandemic, but at the same time, it introduces us to something that I think is going to be in the future. I think e-voting is going to be the thing of the future. The way that we were doing everything, kind of a manual approach to preparing an election, now will be done on the computers, and I think so. This is a good introduction to it. As far as I know, we are going to do e-voting for 10 days prior to October the 17th. And then on October the 17th, it'll just be paper voting. But hopefully 60%, maybe 70% of the people will have already voted. And that will make our job a lot easier on that day. So that's my plan, and that's the way we're progressing. The other thing I want to mention
Sure.
is that I don't go out and look at Marble Mountain to Mead Cove as one unit. It's a county, but to me it's broken up into 6 districts. And I look at the strengths of each district. I have excellent people that I know that have worked with me since 2008 in each of those districts. And I give them the responsibility doing revisions, selecting workers, booking the halls. I shouldn't be telling my secrets, but that's the way I do it in units. And I have people, good people out there who are helping me do that in each unit. So if I want to talk about a hall in District 1 in Shettycamp, I have people that I can call and discuss it. And they'll run over and check it on me. I don't have to drive down there every time I have a problem. I couldn't. And the same way in the other end, in Waihagama or Marble Mountain. That's my basic plan.
All right, that's good that you had that kind of cooperation all the way through the county and in the individual districts for sure.
Excellent.
So Dernie, I wanted to just pick up quickly on the e-voting. And we were talking just before we started the official interview that you're expecting to get the official direction from the municipality in terms of how the e-voting is going to work within the coming days. You should have that by the end of the month. So they've had virtual public hearings on an e-voting bylaw that people can come in and participate in from their computers and from their homes. So do you have a sense on what stage we are in terms of the county being able to officially move forward on that? Does it look like they're all on board? What kind of sense are you getting from your vantage point?
Well, we'll know at this final vote. I mean, it's up to the councillors. So far, I haven't heard anything negative about it. They voted twice on it now. I expect it's going to go through. Once it does, then we turn it over to Intel vote. And I was talking to Dean Smith, he's the CEO of Intel. I was talking to him yesterday, actually. And he was giving me a pretty good outline of what my responsibility is then. And I tell you, Adam, it's refreshing to listen to him because he's got all the bases covered. Like he's going to help a tremendous amount, and anything that he wants us to do is in the form of a module where with instructions which they will provide. And he'll tell me he wants a panel for sort of a help desk. He'll train them. He wants an auditor. He'll train them. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. I didn't know what my responsibilities were going to be on top of everything else I was doing, but I feel pretty confident that we're going to pull this off all right without stressing us out too much. I think that it seems to be unfolding pretty good, and he's a terrific guy. He's got a good staff. And they will be making contact with us as soon as we're ready to go.
That's terrific. I'm glad to hear that. Can you give me a sense, Dernie, because you mentioned, of course, that you've been on deck for these elections, both the general municipal elections and the special elections, for the past 12 years. What's your sense of how voter turnout has been during that time? Do Inverness County residents tend to get the vote out, or are there a couple of areas where you're hoping perhaps e-voting might pump it up a little bit? How are Inverness County residents in terms of getting out to the polls and voting?
Inverness County residents, in my view, if I say to you, well, 50%, you may say, well, that's not good. But if I look at the other municipalities in the province, it's very good. I've seen municipalities down as low as 25%. 50% is 5% is average. Now, of course, Dean says that e-voting is going to prop that up maybe too. We were getting 50% before. He says we're going to get 70% now. So, he's pretty confident in that, and maybe that's true. And, we'll see. But ultimately, what creates a good election is a little bit of controversy or a little bit of competition. If we get one district where you get a couple of guys going toe to toe, but those people are going to come out. They're interested. They want to see what's going on. The other thing, of course, is the work that the municipality does. I think it's very important, and a lot of people recognize that, and they come out to support the councillors based on the work that they did and the work that is to be done. So those factors do add in. And of course, the branding, how we advertise it, and make all the notices and the reporter and the ORN, and in a timely fashion, so that they know what's going on. But I think their turnouts have been great. I just want to clarify though, when I say like 50%, but
Sure.
I never had an election in all 6 districts. So my 50% is based on the districts where I had the elections. So I could have one district that had a really big turnout, and that would give me my average, and that has happened in different times. So it's a bit deceiving, but overall, I think that's the way everybody reports it. And if we're saying 50%, 53%, well, that's what it is.
Last question to you, Dernie, and this is just the idea of doing this at this point in time. I mean, obviously, you come back and serve as returning officer, and anybody that serves in an election does so out of civic duty and the idea of being able to help their community and get the election to run smoothly. Do you think that both yourself and the folks working with you are going to look back on this election of 2020 and say, you know what, it was difficult, but we're going to get through it, and there might be something we could even carry on as a positive that we could use in future elections? Do you think that could be the case for you folks coming out of this?
Absolutely. Not only the election, I think our whole lives have been put on hold, and we're all going to come out of this looking back on it and picking out the good and the bad and the ugly. I think that's going to be what we'll be doing over the next 2-3 years, moving forward. We will never be the same because of it. Our elections will never be the same because of it, because we'll have more e-voting, I think, in the future. Zoom meetings, how we present, the work that we're doing. It's going to be different, but all our lives are going to be different. It's not just the election, but they will be different as well. Yeah.
That's well said, sir. We've covered a lot of ground in just a short time. I appreciate you taking some time for me today. Did you want to add anything else, Dernie, just before we wrap up?
No, I'd just like to tell the people of Inverness County that we are doing everything that we can to make the voting safe, secure, and as we can. And we hope that they will take advantage of the e-voting. And if those who can't do that, then come out on October the 17th and support their council, because they all have important work to do and they want to get at it next year.
Well, in the middle of the important work you're doing, Dernie, we appreciate you taking some time to talk to us today. Thank you so much for joining us here on Telile 24/7.
Okay, Adam, thank you for asking me.
All right. Dernie Gillis is the returning officer for the municipality of the county of Inverness, and we've been speaking to him via Zoom from his home in Craignish. And that wraps up this week's edition of Telile 24/7. Thank you very much for tuning in, and a special thank you to my interview guests this week, Dernie Gillis, John Dowling, and Paul Landry. If you have an idea for an interview or story you'd like to see on Telile 24/7 in the coming weeks, just get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. You can contact me directly. My number is 902-625-8863, and you can email me. That address is adamjrcook@gmail.com. And you can also contact Telile Community Television directly. The station number is 902-226-1928. And of course, don't forget to follow Telile on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And you can also check out Telile's YouTube channel. There's a lot of material there from Telile 24/7, including every episode of the show, including this one. And there's also a lot of additional productions that my friends at Telile have been producing over the last few months and the past few years. Check it out and see what your local community station is doing for you. For now, I'm Adam Cook. Thank you again for joining me on Telile 24/7. We look forward to seeing you next week with a brand new show. Bye for now.